Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming back to another ATS News live stream. We'll be going into more deep dives into the Mackenzie Shirilla case. We've been deep diving into this ever since the Netflix documentary came out, and all opinions are welcome. So we might not agree on, certain things in chat, or if you're watching on replay in the comments down below, but please engage and feel free to share your thoughts and your opinions because I'm very open-minded and a lot of people have different opinions all over this case. It's not so black and white like I feel like Netflix tried to paint it. And so we've just been going into deep dives. And last week we started an interview that Bubba had done on a channel, and it's called Ivory Rose Knows. And so check that out if you want to watch it in full without the commentary. But last week we started it and Melly was here with us. It was a great stream. And so let me give you first a little recap of the first part of his interview. So hold on, let me just write that in the chat. So in case those who are popping in, and hit the like button. It helps more people to see it in the algorithm so that they can join the chat and the discussion as well. If you were on my last stream on Saturday night when I was with Amy Boston, I'm so sorry I forgot to go through the super chats and the membership banners. I got so wrapped up with the guests and then just kind of forgot about them. I'm so sorry. But I do want to thank Pointer Lover and Roxanne for sending PayPal and Cash App this week. And thank you so much, everybody who hits a like and hits a hype button as well. So thank you so much. So hold on, let me write in chat. Recapping part 1. And the discussion with Molly was really good last week. So in case you missed it, watch it on replay, but I'll give you a little summary. And hello, Shay, Angel Eyes, Diva Girl, Adrian. It's good to see everybody. If I missed you, Johnny, good to see you. We're just going to get into things. So the summary from last week when we listened to the first half of this interview. Now, mind you, we've listened to a lot of his interviews. We've gone through his police interview. We've gone through his interview on JFK. And now we've been breaking down this interview as well. So very interesting statements. It says, now remember, they call him Bubba, but his name is Landon. Landon discusses his perspective on the Mackenzie Shirilla case, emphasizing that many of his statements are based on personal experience, memory, or speculation rather than definitive proof. Now, remember, he was kind of throwing a lot of shade at over the course of all these interviews, even his police interview. Like, I don't think that he was very forthcoming. And again, they took weeks to even get a hold of him. It's kind of strange the way that things have gone down with Bubba. I'll leave it at that. If you need more information, check out the other streams. But, just some of the stuff he says, it's wild. So it says he rejects rumors that everyone at the gathering was using Xanax or harder drugs. So for those who don't know, he's one of the last people to see the victims in this case alive, and Mackenzie for that matter. And a lot of people have commented saying that they think that he and Rosie are just chasing the clout, which is basically internet fame for those who don't know, and just writing the case so that they can expand on their name and brands on their own social media. Other people think that he knows more about what happened at the house before everybody left it and before the crash. So the opinions are all over the place for Landon. But a lot of us think that he lies a lot too. And it's like, why? Why are we lying? The case is closed. You know what I mean? There's no reason to come off as not being forthcoming. So we're very confused. So he's denying that there were harder drugs being used at the house. He says Dominic had experimented with stronger substances, but claims the harshest drug he and Rosie and the two other people present that night had ever used was mushrooms. He does not know what Mackenzie, Dom, or Davion may have done earlier that day before arriving. Landon argues that teenage drinking, marijuana use, and drug experimentation were common with the broader Strongsville social circle. He believes the victims and Mackenzie's parents are being judged more harshly because the case became national news. So it says what Landon believes caused the crash. So we've heard him kind of talk on this and the other interviews. So this summary, we'll see if we feel it lines up. Just a little refresher from last week. Landon says he does not believe the available evidence proves an intentional murder. So a lot of us going through these deep dives, especially myself, like I feel like people have gotten a little confused when they pop in here if they're not regulars on this channel. Like we deep dive into the cases here. We don't just touch on the headlines and then skim over them. Like that's why a lot of people follow, because we'll comb through the FOIA requests, the police cameras, the interviews with police, as much as we can, and then we hyper focus on certain things. We don't mean to, it's just that's how we research here. And people think that just because we're looking into things that Bubba says or the documents in this case that we believe that she should be out of prison. Like I want to make it clear, we've never stated that this channel was a free Mackenzie Shirilla. We're simply looking at the information gathered and given to us, and we're combing through it. That sometimes you can't trust what a documentary says. And I know that you guys know that even in your own instances, you might watch a documentary, not even true crime related, and be like, well, that's not actually what I read in this one source. And, everyone kind of remembers things differently, and different families present different perspectives. Even the Shirillas have their own perspective and own whatever in this case, right? I mean, it's not a situation where any of the families made out like good. It's so tragic. So it says what he believes caused the crash. He doesn't believe that the evidence proves an intentional murder. In his opinion, the most plausible possibilities are, and I want to tell you guys, the comments, a lot of them align with Bubba, and could say I could see that happening. So keep an open mind. Reckless driving, possibly while trying to see how quickly they could get home. A medical episode, including a possible POTS-related loss of consciousness. Now that one I think is a reach. I really do. I try to stay open-minded, but a medical episode to me, I'm not really there. I'm not there. I never have, like, I've grazed the idea in my mind, like, okay, and then I'm like, I doesn't make sense, with the gas pedal, and I don't know. I'm not there. Some people are, though. A loss of control connected to the vehicle's airbags deploying. I'm not sure about that one either. He argues that very little is known about the approximately 4-minute drive because only the final seconds were recorded in the meaningful detail. He notes that Davion was reportedly using his phone shortly before the crash and was not shown calling police or seeking help. Landon believes this weighs against the theory that a violent argument or intentional attack was happening inside the car, though it does not independently establish what happened. He repeatedly says that he and the other friends do not feel they know how Dominic and Davion died because, in his view, alternative explanations were never properly investigated by qualified experts. So that kind of is interesting when you guys take in consideration the laptop video that we've discussed and that I've made on the video section of this my channel, because that was backed up by police documents that there was something in regards to a laptop being shown to Mackenzie as they turned on the street, and it was also mentioned to Dom's mother that the laptop that was being shown to Mackenzie while she drove, um, was smashed. So, we don't know, and we've already discussed this. You guys can get, like, more on that. This is the video. And we've talked about it in other deep dives too, like about, let me just play this while we talk. What exactly could have been pulled off that hard drive? Did they try to take anything off that hard drive? Because if we have police notes that are saying it, we saw it with our own eyes, and that's something that's taken place seconds before the crash. if there's something that could be pulled up from that hard drive, like, obviously, things would be taken apart. It's already allegedly smashed. We've never seen any notes about it. They could see a digital footprint of what was being done on that computer leading up, like, through the code. So, I don't know. Like, when we're talking about what exactly was happening inside that car, I do think it's noteworthy that Davion was sending text messages at the time, and that's, lines up with some forensics, digitally that we know was happening, and there wasn't anything like, "Oh gosh, Mackenzie and Dom are really going at it," or, "Oh gosh, I just wanna get home, they keep arguing," so, I don't know, all noteworthy. Mackenzie and Dominic's relationship, this according to Bubba, says, "He and Rosie never personally saw Mackenzie and Dominic raise their voices, become hostile, or act violently toward one another." He acknowledges that arguments happen privately and that the relationship could be toxic. He discusses a highway incident approximately 2 weeks before the crash. According to Landon, Mackenzie told Rosie about the incident and considered leaving Dom because of how he reacted. Landon characterizes Dom as someone who was usually quiet but could react excessively when pushed. Landon argues that evidence he knew about generally showed Mackenzie considering leaving Dom rather than Dom preparing to leave Mackenzie. So that to me is interesting too, because again, he also claims that there was no argument at the house before the crash took place. There's other people who stated in the first statements that there was. So that's always been something that's like, is he lying? Or is he not lying? And then to back up like Mackenzie in the stance of like, no, she was actually going to be the one to leave him. So the fight that you guys are saying happened in the car couldn't have been him telling her he was done because she was going to leave him. It's just like very convenient. You know what I mean? Um, so then he starts going on, and I told you he was talking badly about the victims and the victims' families. For whatever reason, he's got some grudge against certain people. And people have also commented saying that they believe he was jealous of Dom. I don't know. Criticism of Dom's family and the prosecution. Landon says he never personally met Dom's immediate family, even though his own and Rosie's parents had met Dom, Mackenzie, and Davion. He questions how family members were allegedly less involved in Dom's everyday life can dismiss the accounts of his friends. He believes some of Dom's relatives are actively reinforcing the intentional murder narrative and influencing public opinion, possibly because of Mackenzie's appeals. Uh, Again, I have to say, I have seen a lot of comments online about like not really feeling great about certain things that have come out about the family. It's terrible because when you're the victim's family, like all of a sudden you're under a microscope. But I feel like sometimes in instances, like they might need to back away from public because of the unfair scrutiny and, like, just let them grieve how they wanna grieve, because people were like, "Why is his sister, coming off with her YouTube channel and all this stuff right after Netflix?" It just seems very opportunistic, and other people are like, "How dare you?" Just let people grieve how they want, and people are like, "Well, she was telling people to call in the prison that Mackenzie's at right now, and complain to the prison and write the warden." These are comments that are on Facebook and around the community, about getting her tablet taken away because of the selfie or whatever that came out, and other people are like, "I don't think that's right," and other people are just like, "This is how she's working through it personally, and this is her grieving process." So it's very complex, and of course, Bubba's pretty much had to, like, touch on it during this interview again. He keeps dragging specifically Christine. I'm not sure why. He speculates that grief, financial dependence on Dom, or trust in the prosecution may contribute to their position. These are Bubba's allegations, and interpretations, not independently established facts. He is particularly critical of a witness named Hench. Landon argues that Hench's relationship with Dom's mother and his alleged residence with the family should have raised credibility and conflict of concern. So Hench is the person who had the statement that he heard Mackenzie say to Dom, "I will crash this car with you in it." Something along those lines. Um, Now people got all up in arms about me telling Melly that that was like hearsay to us. Now they're like copy and pasting the definition of hearsay in legal terms, and I'm like, yes, like I understand that in this case it was available to be used against Mackenzie. He never had a sworn statement about it, and he never had a police interview where he, discusses it. So, what I was saying to Melly is, like, I just feel like to her and me and to anybody else studying this case, like, it is hearsay to us. So when we're, like, gathering our own opinions and facts in this case, like, it's considered, like, in much of hearsay in other cases, like, we leave up on the table as like, "Oh, yeah, that was possibly said," but, like, I have to remain an open mind. I don't have emotions tied to this, you know what I mean? So, it is true that he was, like, living on property that the family owned or something as well. So, Bubba, like I said, raised credibil credibility and conflict of interest concerns during the interview. So we took note. He claims Hench's account of the highway incident contradicted text messages in which Dom allegedly apologized and expressed unaliving ideations. The Netflix documentary, so this is Bubba still talking about it. Landon says he and Rosie were promised an advanced viewing of the Netflix documentary, and he did not receive one. He claims that Dom and Davion's families saw it early and were able to suggest edits. I'm sorry, but like Bubba, you're just here's the thing. He wants to be the main character, but at the time of the investigation, he and Rosie were like ducking and diving. And, like, yeah, they were your friends. You did know Davion longer because of football, but, like, ultimately, the victim's family, of course, are gonna have the say and the open communication with Netflix editors. And it's so, like, who are you to complain about, like, they promised we were gonna get a viewing, and we never got to see it, but the families were allowed to suggest edits. And remember, he told JFK in that interview, which was awesome, um, that he told Netflix that Dom was a drug dealer, and he was, like, annoyed that they took it out. And everyone's like, "Why are you out here telling all this?" It was just so bizarre. According to Bubba, the project was originally described as a three-part documentary. An episode centered on him and Rosie, an ep they thought they were getting their own episode. An episode covering the prosecution, and an episode covering Mackenzie. Instead, it was released as a much shorter, approximately 80-minute production. And I'll get to chat as well. I'm just kind of reading through the summary. Landon says roughly 18 hours of videos and footage involving him were recorded and much was removed. He says neither he nor Rosie were paid for appearing in the Netflix documentary. They had previously declined another program that offered compensation because they did not want to profit from their friends' deaths. I honestly think he's referring to the Mean Girls episode on Hulu. I think that they declined it because, one, they were offered, like, to pay them, and I think that that was, like they knew that, like, if they declined it, they could at least say on platforms that, like, "Well, no, they wanted to pay us, but we declined it." Do you know what I mean? Like, all, like, self-preservation by declining it, and, like, "See, I'm bigger and better, and I'm a good person." But, like, I really think that they declined it because that was a very anti Mackenzie documentary. Like, the Netflix one was as well, but, like, the Mean Girls episode, I mean, just the title alone, that was very much like dragging Mackenzie and really it was interesting, but I think that that had more to do with Landon and Rosie, like, declining it. Landon claims the Netflix filmmakers agreed to not discuss on Rosie's social media career, but included it anyway. He says Rosie and Mackenzie were pursuing traditional modeling at the time, not trying to build a true crime or social media brand from the case. Landon says he was the closest to Davion who lived with him and was like a brother than an ordinary friend. He argues that he would publicly condemn Mackenzie if he genuinely believed she intentionally killed Davion. Now that part is noteworthy. Like, he was close with Davion from what we know, um, but it is interesting because it's like, why would he back Mackenzie so much? Like, that was his friend. He wasn't as close to Dom, and you can definitely tell by the way he kinda drags him and his family. He is upset by portrayals of Davion as merely an involved passenger or cargo. Landon says Davion was an important member of the group and could naturally have been in the car just as Landon or Rosie could have been. Landon says he, Rosie, and the other friends knew Mackenzie had POTS, although they did not understand the condition fully. He recalls hearing that Mackenzie had previously fainted at home and struck her head on the floor, as well as having episodes at school. That was something new that he never said in other interviews about her hitting her head on the floor. He says that immediately after the crash, the friends' first theories were that Mackenzie had suffered a POTS related episode or that the crash resulted from reckless driving. He rejects claims that the condition was invented only as a defense after the fact. Landon disputes the portrayal of Mackenzie as a prostitute or Dominic as a conventional pimp. He describes their activity as trying to get older men to send small amounts of money for non explicit or mildly suggested photographs, such as pictures of feet or hair. He presents this as immature finessing for spending money rather than coercion or organized sex work. So we're going to get to that statement as well because I that was just kind of shocking. Landon strongly disputes claims that Mackenzie showed no remorse or grief. He recounts visiting her in the hospital approximately 1 or 2 weeks after the crash. Her family initially tried to shield her from information about Dom's death and funeral. After learning she did not attend the funeral, Landon says Mackenzie attempted to try to get out of her hospital bed and remove her IDs despite serious injuries. He and Rosie reportedly claim that they had to calm her before the police intervention became necessary. He also describes Mackenzie keeping Dom's belongings untouched, preserving his last jar of marijuana, wearing his clothing sparingly to retain his scent, and creating a memorial area in her room. Landon says Mackenzie initially refused to go out on social media or socially and had to be persuaded to attend the Halloween events and the Kid Cudi concert connected to plans the group had made with Dom and Davion before the crash. He argues that attending these events was not evidence that she was celebrating or unaffected. He says her friends encouraged her to leave the house while she was grieving. His overall position is that Mackenzie and Dom had spent nearly every day together for approximately 4 years, making his death deeply traumatic regardless of the relationship's problems. He predicts that Mackenzie may experience another severe wave of grief whenever she eventually leaves prison and must resume ordinary life without him. So he that was weird too. He starts talking about, like, when she gets out, maybe it'll be 5 years, maybe it'll be 10, maybe 15, but she's gonna have to start the grieving it's like he is imagining a life where Mackenzie is out free. Like, it was just kind of, like, weird. Like, does he fantasize about these things? I've seen comments from you guys that are saying, like, Mackenzie, he loved Mackenzie, he was jealous of Dom. I don't know. These are comments you guys are saying, but I really appreciate you guys, sharing your thoughts and all that and continue to, shady ass, I know, right? I'm looking through the chat right now, and then we're gonna start listening to it. Hit the like button if you haven't. Um, And I agree. Netflix shouldn't lie. I do agree. Hi, boss lady and everybody. Thanks for being here. All right. So what I want to do, I want to refresh on his strange statements that he made about, remember, this is information that came out through the FOIA and through the trial. Like they pulled stuff from her Snapchat that basically was her eliciting sex with guys for money. So that's just what it is. And Bubba, I thought when he said this, I was just like, I couldn't believe it, honestly. So I just want to refresh on it because somebody left a comment saying that I misinterpreted it and I requoted him. I'm like, how else am I supposed to take this?
Whole thing of Mackenzie.
Hold on, let me slow it down too, because we have it at 1.25, but let's hear this part like normal.
Being a prostitute. No, it was she was not out here selling her body because she wanted to. It was more of like I swear I've told Rosie to do this before. I swear to God I've told her to do this before. And it's just something like a man who's trying to like get as much money as he can will like do. And it's like, oh, go out here and find these dumb 60-year-old men who are hornballs who will send you $50 just to see a picture of your feet or just to see a picture of your hair, you know, of you playing with your hair, like some stupid stuff like that. Like go and finesse him out of all of his money, please, you know. And that was like really what Dom was pushing kind of for Kenzie, and it wasn't like in a bad way or like
yeah.
It's like go open a foot finder and see what dummy or
exactly.
can find.
Okay, so again, it's odd.
I was like, yeah, no. That was my thought. I'm telling you right now, I seen what I needed to see.
Cause I don't care when I'm with my baby.
No, I think that's very odd. And unfortunately, could it be true that it was like suggested to her by Dom? Like, yeah, you know, if as long as it's feet, like, who cares? That's $200. If someone's going to pay you $200, like, sure. But that obviously isn't the end of like what it was for Mackenzie, based off of digital forensics pulled from her Snapchat. So I don't know. It's wild the way that he tries to like normalize it. Maybe that was the extent of what Bubba knew to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I hope so, because that's wild. Okay, so now we're going to go up to where we left off, and we're just going to pause and react to this when we need to. He's not on here the whole time, so at some point he does jump off.
That Kenzie was just sitting there looking at pictures, all going through her camera roll, looking through pictures, looking through old text messages of her and Dom, and just crying her eyes out, and ended up actually going back to the car before the main performer, Kid Cudi, even came on. She ended up going back to the car because she was sad, and that she was not only sad.
Thank you so much for this comment, Phil, for Dom Russo. He knew he was doing stuff for money. He called her a prostitute multiple times in text messages. So the thing too about the texts is like, we haven't gone through them. I think that that's where we should start. Like after this interview, you know, we'll get to her phone calls, but I think that a baseline should be the text. And I know that there's been Long Crime has done an episode. A lot of people have done episodes on the text messages. I think that it'd be best if we just read through them live, you know, that way, because that's the best way for me to kind of absorb it in its entirety. And again, could that be tied to what he was showing her on the laptop seconds before the crash took place?
But she was also in pain from the injuries of just sitting there in a wheelchair uncomfortably for that long amount of time. She ended up going back to the car and just sitting in the car until the rest of the girls got done with the concert that night. So it's like they just painted like a complete half picture of all these instances and didn't explain the full thing. It's just shitty.
Yeah. Let me ask you, I'm going to ask you this now because I've been picking it up in the chat. In the interview with, I believe it was Paul, were there guns at the house that night?
No. So later, so it's funny. So actually that right there is the reason why we didn't talk to police. So what was it? Paul. So when I went back to Paul's house after they had died that morning. And it was all of us that was there that night. And we're trying to wrap our heads around what the hell happened, what was going on, like remembering everything in the night. Paul ends up I can't remember who brought it up to Paul, but someone brought it up to Paul. They're like, well, were they drinking? Were they smoking or anything? And Paul's like, well, at my house, no, but I don't know if I knew that they were at a grad party before our house. I don't know if they were drinking. I don't know if they were doing anything there. And if they were, and it came back in their toxicology reports or whatever, that him and his family could be liable because they left from his house last, that they saw the state of manner that they're, because I know that's a law in Ohio or whatever, that where if you constantly let somebody drive away drunk or high or something, they get into an accident, you and whoever owns that house can be at fault for that. So Paul being, I'll tell you now, out of all of us, Paul was like the least involved with any like smoking, with any type of that type of life, you know? So he was like tweaking. He was like, oh my God, my parents are going to kill me. So his parents were gone that night. So his parents ended up coming back early and they ended up going to talk to the police. Well, he had his interview scheduled. I don't know the exact dates, but he had his scheduled. Rosie was supposed to do hers the next day. The other girl there that night was supposed to do hers the day after.
And in case you didn't hear Phil, or Paul, I think I'm reading Phil's comment and I'm thinking about Paul. Okay, so Paul is the house owner, goes to school with them, closer to Rosie and Mackenzie. That his house is the house that they leave from and get into the crash. So we have Paul's interview on my channel in the video section. If you haven't heard it, like listen to it. It's very interesting. But yeah, let's hear what Bubba has to say about Paul.
For that. And I can't remember if I scheduled mine afterwards or not. I can't remember if I scheduled mine afterwards or if I even scheduled one at all. I can't remember because I don't ever remember like talking to them, but about like scheduling it that early on in the investigation, you know? And so Paul goes in there, does his investigation, and we get it. He gets out and we're all like, so what's the word? Like, what are they saying? What's going on? What things are they asking you, you know? And he goes, it's bad. He goes, they're asking about where Dom gets his drugs from. They told my parents.
And remember, Paul tells them it's bad, and then they all decide they're not going to do their interviews anymore. And apparently a DEA agent was in there. So it's much deeper than just they were investigating a car crash. And that's just the facts. And we see that just by statements in the detectives' work. You know, like they had the DEA involved and they were talking to Paul about guns and, you know, what he knew about illegal guns being owned and stuff. So this was much deeper than just, and by the way, they called Bubba's college when they were trying to get a hold of him. And his coach was like somebody who they ended up calling because Bubba was dodging phone calls. And he admits that he was dodging their phone calls in his police interview. And tries to like excuse it, but they reached out to his coach at his college and said that there was a drug trafficking investigation going on and Bubba could be involved in it and they needed to speak with him.
Parents that there's a gun buried in the yard and that if there's a gun to call them. And we're like, what the fuck? We're like, holy shit. And like, there's only ever been one time where I've ever been around Dom with guns. And it was the time where all them carnival pictures of us at the carnival, like the one that like of all of us sitting in that little bowl thing, that was at the carnival. That was on one of them little rides that you sit in and it spins a bunch. So it was in one of those rides that we took that picture. And so that night, that was a different carnival because that was the Middleburg carnival. This one was the Strongsville carnival. Once we came back from the Strongsville carnival, he had ended up keeping his guns in my room because he would drive around with his guns and he didn't want to go to the carnival that was right next to the police station with the guns on him. So he ended up keeping them in a DoorDash bag in my bedroom. And so that was the only time I ever like really been around Dom with guns. But that night specifically, there was no guns involved. I didn't see, he didn't bring them in. He didn't bring in like from my knowledge, he usually kept them in a DoorDash bag, like in the trunk of the car. It was in like one of them DoorDash fucking cooler bags. But, so that specific night, there was never any guns involved. And so when we heard about that, like being young, 18, 17-year-old kids and knowing that this kid is a big time drug dealer and not really caring, you know, because it didn't really like affect our lives. He didn't really talk about it much. Like it was more his other friends and his older friends that were involved in that type of stuff. He didn't really talk about that stuff with us. And so when we heard about this, we're like, man, like we don't have any information for them that's to that topic of his life. And so that was really why me, Rosie, and the other girl that night ended up canceling our interviews because we're like, well, if that's what they're asking about.
And remember when Rosie is in her Netflix clips, she says that she didn't want to talk to them because of how they kind of try to pin things on teens when their parents aren't in the room, and that they were just trying to nail the next drug dealer. So do we believe that Paul's interview kind of scared them away because they didn't know anything about that stuff, or because they did know about more about that stuff? Like, again, thoughts and opinions are welcome, and everyone is proven innocent until otherwise in a court of law. So don't take this speculation as fact. Just wondering, you know, and I've been wondering why it just seems like Bubba and Rosie really try to like avoid talking to police. She was never subpoenaed. Like, all this stuff has just left a lot of questions. Even the people that the police did talk to, the interviews weren't that long. They didn't really push the topics, and we can go through those eventually too someday.
We don't know nothing about that. We also asked like legal counsel about it, and they're like, don't talk. It's obviously deeper than what you guys know, and they'll come to their terms of their investigation whenever they come to it. Like, us talking about that information, not knowing anything about it, won't help them or not, you know? And so that's why we at first hesitated to talk. And so where that whole gun thing comes from, now that we've looked over all the case files, is I guess they found a full box of ammo under the seat. And I guess that's the quote unquote credible information to let them know that there was a gun involved. I don't really know how that lets them know that there was a gun involved. Like, okay, a box of ammunition was found. Okay.
So they just assumed off the ammunition in the car.
Yeah. Like, I don't really assume. Don't know how that tells you that there was definitely a gun involved and that you should be asking about it, you know?
Yeah.
But so that's where that whole thing comes from. But then once they kind of built their investigation and we got the phone call and we heard that they were saying that Mackenzie did this on purpose, that's when I went out and had my interview with police. And then Rosie, we're working on it now, but she had a full hour and a half interview with the prosecutor, not the police, with the prosecutor himself on the phone.
Right? Yeah,
yes, on the phone. Yes. And there's multiple layers of proof to prove that, but people are just gonna have to wait for that to come out. So,
but the thing that Bubba and Rosie don't understand is like, okay, you talked to the prosecutor on the phone. How does that show us that you were like willing and able to cooperate and help the investigation? Like, you could argue that it did, you know what I mean? But at the same time, for full transparency, let's face it, like, we don't have access to that phone call to listen to. You know, like, just because you tell us that she talked to the prosecutor, like, that doesn't just diminish our like questions of like your guys' behavior and actions. And the behavior and actions matter in this case because, remember, they used Mackenzie's behavior and actions against her to convict her. And again, she's where she needs to be. She was at fault here. I want to emphasize that. But, you know, everyone's got different opinions here. Some people don't think that they proved intent. Some people think that she had a medical episode. Some people think that there was reckless driving, or, you know, maybe there was an argument taking place and somebody else had the foot on the gas. Like, nobody really knows except for those who were there. You know what I mean? And you can choose and think that Mackenzie's lying. I feel like she's lying when she talks about like not remembering things, and she remembers turning down the street. Well, then you would remember Dom showing you something on his laptop then, because it's happening right when you're saying you remembered turning down the street. You know what I mean? There was talk about, can I tell them I had a seizure? There was talk about avoiding a deer possibly. So there has been things that have been stated that are like, sounds like she's trying to avoid the truth. So, but again, it's very interesting, all the layers to all this. Yeah, she totally remembers what happened. Bubba was talked with a lot of people and said a lot of shit. Yep. And he keeps going. Like, his interview with JFK that we went through, that was like over 3 hours long.
But yeah, so I don't really know. I don't know why. Like, I think, in my opinion, that was a shitty detective work. Like, just off the rip. Like, the first kid you talk to off the rip, you know? And like, they're also asking him about like, well, was Dom ever like, and there's nothing to it. They're asking like if Dom was jealous of Kenzie and Paul's relationship. And I'm like, well, why are
Paul gay, right?
Yes. I'm like, why are we focusing on like how Dom's feeling though? Like, I'm confused. I mean, I guess it could play in a part of if they got into a fight, but yeah.
And yeah, that's what's so entertaining is like he thinks that he's clear in the air and like explaining misinformation and things, but he's actually like painting a huge picture, and we're starting to kind of feel out for like when we think he's lying when he goes on certain rants, and then other times we're like, well, yeah, that does make sense, like, or that is interesting that he brings that up, you know what I mean? So yeah, he ran his mouth like Diva Girl said and gave us a lot of helpful info. So true.
And then Paul was like, no, I'm gay. Like, I don't rap that way, you know? And I want to address that other thing too, because I saw one video of a phone call between Rosie and Mackenzie where they're talking about that Hoosney kid and they're making gay remarks and whatnot. And what that really comes from is because like a lot of people don't know the personal like encounters and the personal stories behind all of this. And when it comes to that kid in this case, like both Dom and Davion hated that kid, did not like him multiple times. And actually in that phone call, when Rosie says the word gay and she says that, she's actually reiterating what Dom told to me and her in the car about him. It wasn't like she was just saying that up out of thin air and that's her opinion. No, that was what Dom told us. Dom told us dirt on Tyler Proctor, the kid that said that, oh, she did voodoo. He told us dirt on Hoosney. Like, so both them kids right there, Hoosney and Tyler Proctor, Dom and Davion, well, I won't say Davion for Tyler, but Dom himself did not like Tyler Proctor and did not like that Hoosney kid. He just simply didn't.
And again, like the grudge that Bubba holds against people who came to the cops with information, he's referring to the ex-boyfriend who gave us information about Mackenzie and what was going on. We went through his interview on my channel as well. And he's tearing apart one of the kids that came forward with the Life 360 data. And he said the same thing in the JFK interview, like he wants it known. And ultimately, this was on TikTok that this YouTuber uploaded on her channel. And I'll put the whole link in the description box. But so he's gone on YouTube and TikTok saying a lot of this mostly similar things. Some things are kind of new in them and different, but why is he hold such a grudge against those kids and like he wants them to know that what the victims thought of them and that they didn't like them. And it's like, it's wild. You know what I mean? Like to speak for the victims and to tell people who helped the case out that the victims didn't even like you. Mind you, yeah, exactly. Tyler gave a really good statement to the police. He sounded very reliable. And here's Bubba on TikTok and on YouTube basically saying like, oh, and by the way, they didn't even like you guys. It's just so like, ew. And again, like, does he hold a grudge because that one of the Tyler guys is Mackenzie's ex-girlfriend or boyfriend and he has a thing for Mackenzie? Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of disdain for people who came forward and cooperated.
They weren't friends. I know I talk a little bit about Hoosney in my police interview with Davion and how we got him fired from multiple jobs and stuff. Like I remember I talked to the police about that. So like, that's why it was kind of weird to me that Hoosney was the one going in and saying all this crazy stuff and saying that they were off of psychedelics or they were doing this or they were fighting. Like,
so the thing is, Davion texted this guy and said that he was tripping balls, which refers to, you know, mushrooms. So here's Bubba just basically saying like, oh, even though Davion said that in a text message, like it's bullshit. It's like, wait, what? But that was something that they confirmed that was stated.
Dog, we don't like you, bro. Like we don't like you.
Even there, how would they know?
Yeah,
type of thing.
yeah. Like it's like we don't like you. We weren't talking to you to the night of. We probably weren't talking to you even the week of. So like I don't understand how. Like the only credible, useful information them kids had were the Life 360. Was the Life 360 information? That was the only useful thing.
Yeah, and they came forward with that, and you still drag them. Like that was useful. You just admitted it. So what is all this dragging about?
Everything else they went in there and said was all misinformation or like mistranscribed information that they've heard through the
Well, that's what I'm saying.
grapevine.
They went in there with a full-blown story ready to go, and
Yeah,
then
nah.
they have to show.
No, it's it's bullshit. I think that because at the end of the day, like that whole group, like Husney, like he's best friends with Tyler Proctor. Tyler Proctor's best friends with Blair. Blair's best friends with all, like they're all best friends. That all those kids are all one big close ass friend group, and they all kind of went in there knowing what they wanted to say, and I feel like it all stemmed from one individual. I don't know who, but it all definitely stemmed. And like another thing that I find weird too is that like when Tyler Proctor went in his interview, he was like, "I'm related to Dom by God." Like that's weird. Like that's very. I don't know if anyone caught on that. That's very weird. Like why? I don't know. Like it's just very weird. And another thing too is like they say, "Oh, that's Kenzie's ex-boyfriend." They dated for a week. And then they broke up. That was it. They weren't like a couple month thing. They were a very 1 week and then not. It didn't work out. Yeah. So
that's wild. How they just walked in there with this story, and it was really soon. What was it? The next day?
Yeah.
How long after?
What? Yeah, it was. I think it was. I remember because it was definitely before I went to college. I remember because it was when they first passed, where they crashed at, we had a vigil there. We had like a bunch of flowers and pictures and candles up right there at the side at the grass at the end, like right where the road's at. And for like 2 weeks solid. I know I would say 2 weeks solid for everyone in Strong. So for me personally, it was probably only a week until I went to college. It was all the way up until I went to college. We would sit there like all night, every night. There'd be a group of like 20, 30 kids all there talking, sharing stories and whatnot. And so, yeah, I mean, they were all trying to ask us like if they were fighting in this, and we're like, nah, like there was never any fights. And that's what blows my mind is that like everyone that was there that night said they weren't fighting. That saw them 4 minutes before they died. All of them said it was perfectly fine vibes. The girl before the grad party, I don't know what her name is, but that girl, she said no, there was no fights. There was no things that she could bring up to where it would show that they were fighting. There's videos of them at the zoo before that where you can hear in the background Kenzie and Dom, you can hear Dave, you can hear them all being happy and whatnot. So like everything of that day, that physical day, and the witnesses that saw them, and mind you, the key word here is witnesses. The witnesses that saw them that day all said they weren't fighting. But then if you go look at the PowerPoint that the prosecution used to build this narrative and to build this case, they give a proper thank you to Husni Ahmad, Tyler Croy, Tyler Proctor's mother, and then Davion's sister. I'm like, you just listed off 4 people that we've never hung out with that whole summer. Those 3 months, 4 months leading up to that, never seen them, has never hung out with them, never had nothing with them. They don't know shit about shit, but those are, I guess, are the main witnesses that are.
Yeah, those are the main witnesses because for some reason, even after talking to the prosecutor, they didn't want Rosie or you guys didn't want to like help out the case. I don't know what it is or where it lies, but very interesting. Bubba talking about being disappointed in the witnesses that they picked, and wow.
Great in this narrative, and that gave them the tips and the information of for them to build their case. And I just find that really.
Even in his police interview, he wasn't 100% forthcoming about information. So, you know, you guys like gave the appearance that you were forthcoming and helpful, but you really weren't. And then at the end, you're complaining the people that the prosecution thanked for witnesses.
They got the information, not the people who were with them that night.
Yeah, no, not the people, not any.
And the thing too is they've been very vocal after there's been a conviction and the case is closed. But while the case was open, it's just interesting how quiet he and Rosie were. And then now they're going to bat and he's white knight and for Mackenzie and all this stuff. It's like, but where were you when the opportunity was there for you to kind of paint this picture that you're saying like everybody's got it all wrong and this is how it was?
The information, none of the people that saw them that day, that night, nope, they didn't use any of that information. They thought we had something to hide. They thought we were lying. Like I remember when she got sentenced, the prosecutor, like afterwards, the prosecutor had a video and he goes, "That Landon Turner kid's suspicious. I think he's."
The detectives said that they thought whatever happened that night, and we played it last week, they believed Bubba was involved. That's in their own phone calls and the FOIA requests.
hiding something. Well, what the hell?
And let's face it, like, if what he's saying right now is true, that the prosecutor said that they thought that they were hiding things, then that was stated after he spoke to Rosie for that hour-long conversation. So remember how he's trying to basically say, like, she spoke to the prosecutor, she did help with things. And now he's basically discrediting, that prosecutor that he wants us to, like, rely on, of, like, see, like, there was nothing suspicious, but now he's, like, letting us know that the prosecutor thought they were suspicious. This is, like, adding a lot of confusion, but at the same time, like, if she spoke to the prosecutor and then he still heard the prosecutor saying that they were suspicious, like, is that why you guys didn't make the witness list for them? Like, hold on. Let's hear that again.
They thought we had something to hide. They thought we were lying. Like, I remember when she got sentenced, the prosecutor, like, afterwards, the prosecutor had a video and he goes, that Landon Turner kid's suspicious. I think he's hiding something. Well, what the hell do you think I'm hiding? And it's crazy because I think that they made all of this knowing Dom's nature, knowing Dom's character, who he was, and that I was one of the only, like, straight males, I guess. I don't really know if that makes a difference or not, but I was really only the only male there that could have, like, known what's going on with Dom, or that could be involved with Dom, or could be involved with that. So I think they were just trying to knock me in that sense because I was simply just there and I was around Dominic Russo, And like I said, like, none of us were, like, Dom had his own battles. He was a lot deeper in a hole. You know what I mean? He was doing a lot more things and experimenting with a lot more things than all of us were at that time, And I feel like the police knew that too. I feel like the police knew that, and so they automatically took that image and placed it on us since we were there that night,
Now that could honestly be a bit true. And of course, like, guilty by association, but, like, do I believe that Bubba, like, wasn't doing things that he's claiming Dom was doing, even though Dom's not even here to defend himself? Like, just kind of, like, gross. I don't know. I think that the body cam that came out of Dom being pulled over, like, days before the crash, and the way that they were searching his vehicle and stuff, like, I think that there is a possibility that he was in too deep with things in that lifestyle. And I think that they were kind of closing in on him. I think that that's entirely possible. But do I think that Bubba's this innocent, like, bystander to, like, this lifestyle that Dom was living and he's, like, a saint? Like, no, I don't. In fact, he made comments in the JFK thing about, like, I remember it was something about cocaine or something like that. And it was like, how would he even know? I don't know.
Wasn't there were more people than that were interviewed at that party, right? Who's Nina?
So yeah, so Paul ended up getting interviewed. You know that.
Yeah.
Nina was there.
Was never questioned.
Yeah, so she ended up, she was on the same type of time we were on. We heard about this drugs and these guns. We all canceled our interviews. And after we all canceled our interviews, the police really only pushed for me and Rosie. They never really pushed or reached out too crazily to her to talk. And that's really why I guess she didn't end up talking, is because they never really pushed for those interviews,
I do think, like, because we've talked about this with Melly and previous streams, that, like, the investigation does look a little weak. Like, they did go through her social media. They did go through their messages. And yeah, that took a lot of time. But like I said, some of the interviews were kind of short, in my opinion. And, we never got information about the laptop and the condition it was in. And Nina, to me, it is odd that they didn't really push, it seems, even in the investigation notes and stuff, they didn't really push to talk to her. And I think anybody at Paul's house that night, there should have been, like, a lot of initiatives and paper trail for us to see that, like, they tried to call Nina. She didn't answer this time. They tried to call her on this date. She didn't answer. You know what I mean? But, like, we don't have anything in regards to Nina.
Yeah.
Like, they were like, I know Rosie, they had the police call her. She denied talking with police because of the way the investigation was going. And then they tried, and I'm next to her this whole time. I'm doing the same thing. We're hand in hand going together, And Next thing you know, she has the DEA calling her phone, and I had the DEA hitting up my college saying that I'm involved in a drug trafficking case and that I could be a suspect and not a victim. And so that even further proved us, okay, let's not talk. We're not talking. And then out the blue, literally out the blue, we hear that they're thinking of charging her with murder and think that she did this on purpose. And so that's when we kind of like, were like, okay. And that's when when I called the detective and I was like, okay, come down to Marietta. I'll have an interview with you, however long you want. And then when I went down and had that interview, I would say that was in October. When did she get charged? November. Did she get charged in November?
Yeah.
So anytime between October and November is when, like, I would say 2 weeks or a week before she was prosecuted in court is when Rosie had her phone call with the prosecutor. Because if I remember correctly, when we were on the phone, he was like talking about the question he'd asked her in court. He was asking her about some of the drug stuff. He was asking her just little bits of information, not really a full in-depth explanation of the whole night, but he was asking her pretty decent questions. And he ended up at the end of the phone call being like, okay, I'll give you a call in a week. And that's when we'll have you come in and testify for court. So yeah, that's about approximately when Rosie ended up talking to the prosecutor, was I would say a week or two before court. Because her and the lawyer, the prosecutor and the lawyer, both were saying that they were going to subpoena Rosie to court, but they never subpoenaed her. And then when we were in the juvenile court in the binding over process, her lawyer literally looks at Rosie and he goes, they're going to try and charge you for drug trafficking. I'm not having you testify in court. So literally what he told Rosie. And so
boom. Bombs are dropped. So if the lawyer, Rosie's lawyer, mind you, she got a lawyer. This is new. We heard that they got legal advice, and we also heard that Rosie's father is a retired police chief, but it's never been confirmed until now. At least I'm just hearing this, that Rosie did solidify a lawyer. So for them to charge or threaten to charge her with drug trafficking, like there must have been much more. And yeah, he did end up talking to the police. He was not 100% forthcoming at all, though. He didn't even mention like the weed or anything until like they brought it up or something near the end of it. And also remember, this is also noteworthy, the time that Bubba spoke with police, Rosie broke up with him. They were on some break. So, is that coincidence? You guys let me know.
she just never went to court, never testified, never talked. And that was based off of legal counsel and also based off of, I mean, the fact that they just didn't call her in. They didn't subpoena her. You know, they really thought that she held the key and Rosie Graham knew what was going through Mackenzie Shirilla's mind at that moment in time and at that night. I think they would have grand jury subpoenaed her, but they didn't, because when she did have the phone call with the prosecutor, everything the prosecutor was saying, Rosie was denying and saying, no, that's not true. That's not how that was. It's not, like, that doesn't make sense. Every time he would refer it to as a homicide investigation, she'd refer it to as an accident, and it would just tick him off, you know, and stuff like that. So, I mean, it was obvious that the information we held was no use in their investigation and their narrative. And that's really the reason why the whole public thinks that we didn't talk and that we didn't cooperate. But in reality, we did, you know.
So do you think that?
So if the whole time they were disagreeing with the prosecution, like, are you understanding why they didn't call you guys for witnesses then? Because you just said 10 minutes ago you were annoyed that they called and thanked certain people for being a witness for the state. But right here, you're saying everything the prosecutor was saying, you guys were saying, like, no, that's not how it was, and that's not accurate. That's why they didn't want you speaking. And again, they might not have subpoenaed her because she had a lawyer, and the lawyer, you, according to you, told her that he wasn't going to have her testify or speak at all. So yeah, and again, you could say that they were just trying to corner her into something that she was innocent of, or is there more information that they're hiding?
It sounds to me like these people were going to get a conviction regardless of who it was or what it was for.
Yeah, I do think that. I know Dom.
Then it became murder with the accident. I just feel like they were searching for something.
Yeah, I think that they were definitely trying to fulfill a certain level or a certain degree of charges, of how, like, I don't know if murder stands the same as, mass drug trafficking and mass gun trafficking. I don't know if that carries the same weight, but I will say, like,
Yeah, it sounds like he was listening in on the conversation. And it also sounds like they sat in on the juvenile court because they wanted to be in on all the information too. You know what I mean? You can argue it was just to support her, or you could argue like they want to know exactly what's taking place so they know like what's going to be ahead, like the next step for them.
I'll put allegedly around this. Allegedly, I know he was I know Dom was under investigation for the girl falling down the stairs.
Right.
I know he was under investigation for that. And there are text messages where a girl who witnessed her fall down the stairs said she blacked out and fell down the stairs. Nobody pushed her. There was no malice towards that. If there was, I would say there was 120 people there that night. Somebody would have seen somebody push somebody down the stairs, and they would have told the police. That simple. So no one and no certain individual pushed her down the stairs. But I know he was under investigation from that. And this is where I really, really emphasize the allegedliness. I do feel as if he was under investigation for drugs and guns at that time as well. Like we had heard things about that he had a warrant out or something that morning for his arrest because he failed to appear to court or something like that. Not exactly sure on that nature, but that was what was being said at the time of the accident.
So there was, I heard about the investigation. I never spoke on it because, I didn't have much to go on, but yeah, I heard about this possible drug investigation going on, and it looked wild.
I know cops are sitting outside of his house all the time. I know that a week prior to the incident, when Davion was already living with them, Davion and Dom actually got pulled over and the car got searched, and they broke a couple plastic like trim that you could pop off because they thought they were hiding stuff in the trim. So they strip searched Dom's whole Cadillac. He owned a Cadillac at the time. They strip searched the whole thing, and that was like a week or two prior, I would say.
Yes, and we've gone through that on Melly's channel. So if you haven't seen the body cam, it is interesting. We'll get there in our investigation. That might align with us going through some of the text messages because that was something that took place leading up to the crash. Everything's relevant, even if it's before the crash, because just Google the butterfly effect, The
accident happening. I wonder if there's any police thing about that or not. I don't know if they report those type of things or document those type of things if they don't find anything, because they didn't find anything. No arrests were made, nothing of those sorts. It was just a simple search.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, the police knew. Everyone knew. Everyone in the town knew what was going on. The fact that
could also be why Christine would push for the murder charge as well.
Yeah, I would assume too. Like, and this is just smart, like, I guess, words of wisdom to people, certain individuals, and like, it's plain as day that Dom did what he did. So instead of like saying people are liars, just simply say you don't want to talk about it. Like, that's so much better. Just simply say I'd rather not speak on it. Don't sit here and try to call people liars about it, because then now you're discrediting certain people publicly, and now it's going to get to the point where they're going to have to come out with evidence to show what they're saying is correct. And at the end of the day, nobody wants that. We don't want that. I know the families don't want that. So like, it's just simple. Like, just stop calling certain people liars, because it's not helping the case whatsoever.
It's not at all. And listen, regardless of what he did or he's dead, right? He deserves justice to some extent, right? As long as it's not justice. Nobody wants to see him dead. People should be able to grieve and mourn. Nobody's life is worth any more than anybody else's. But again, if you're going to tell a story and push a narrative on people and tell what you believe to be other people's truths, then everyone has to understand that everything about everybody is going to start to come out, right?
Yep.
And if you're lying and you're hiding stuff and you're not being honest, like, people are quick to be honest and talk about Mackenzie, but not so honest to talk about everyone else. Again, everyone's life is equal. So we're not going to sit there and act like, he did this, so his life wasn't worth it, because absolutely not at all. But you do have to be honest on who these people are and to show that there's more of a story, and don't sit there and act like, he was this great, everyone was cookie cutter clean, and you know what I mean? The woman is this horrible girl who murdered them, but look at these perfect people. No, they weren't. They all had past, they all had issues. It was real life. And so just like Mackenzie had real life issues, so did everybody. And again, to sit there and act like that doesn't exist while you're blaming this girl on intentional murder is wild. And like you said, things are going to start coming out then that you don't want to come out. So you might as well just acknowledge who he really was, right? Like, acknowledge who he really was and not who you would have wanted him to be.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. I agree. Like, no matter what somebody does. Now, obviously, I mean, I would say no matter what, because there are certain degrees to where if someone does something that could really make them look bad, you know, and change some people's opinions. But like to what he was doing, it should have no reflection on if he was rightfully, like, you know what I mean, supposed to be alive or not. Like, it has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with all of them. Like all three kids that were involved in this situation, anything that happened to them, they do not deserve it whatsoever. No matter what they did in their life, no matter what they did behind the scenes that nobody talks about, that nobody knows, that I don't know. You know, it does not matter. It does not matter. It does not justify anything. But what I say is that it should be the main point of focus here, is that we have a narrative being pushed that she was some drug addict, right? And then we also have this whole fact that she got charged with criminal tools and charged with drug possession in the car. And it's like, I'm sorry, like there's explanations to that. Like when there is heavy drugs in the car, it can range from mushrooms all the way up to pills, all the way up to whatever you want to call it, man. If they were driving around, Dom would have Mackenzie put it on her because she's a minor, and they won't strip search her. They won't search her person. They won't search her clothes.
I think that she's a female, and a female can say they don't want to be searched by a male.
Exactly. It brings up so many different problems.
Again, people can come and be like, that's BS. I don't believe him. But let's entertain that and play devil's advocate and say that we do believe that. Because remember, when she's pulled from the car wreckage, in her waistband, not her pocket, because I'm assuming like she's wearing tights or something that didn't have pockets, is the scale and the mushrooms, 8 grams. So if we believe that that was just a regular thing that was like always planned, then that makes you think like, so then was, because obviously because people are saying like, no, she purposely hit the building and most damage was done to Dom's side on purpose so that she would survive. And she knew that was going to happen because she hit the building in a way that more damage was done to him instead of her. And she never really wore her seatbelt, but for some reason she was wearing her seatbelt then. So that also points to she planned this and she was going to wear the seatbelt and save herself. People also argue that like she did some dry runs and drove down that street prior, and all this was premeditated, right? So why would she be okay with being like caught with the mushrooms? You know what I mean? Like to me, like her putting the mushrooms in her waistband, like to me it seems like, which Bubba doesn't agree with, like he keeps saying like everyone who saw them that day said that they didn't see them in an argument. And you know, even the house that they went to before Paul's house, she said that they weren't in an argument. But that doesn't mean that in that 4 minutes of the house, in between the houses, that something didn't happen, you know, because Bubba keeps going back to like everything was fine, because the argument would show intent, right? You know, something takes place and she won't have it, you know what I mean? And she flips out. So an argument could still take place that nobody knew about besides them at that moment, you know what I mean? But also it is interesting because maybe they did leave in an okay manner, and then something did happen, and that's why the mushrooms were on her waistband. I don't know. I hyper focus on little things, and her hiding the mushrooms on herself. Like if this was all planned, like why wouldn't she put the mushrooms like on Dom, or like in Dom's backpack, or in the center console? Like, I don't know. It definitely still could leave the possibility that a fight or something broke out in those 4 months before the crash that nobody knew about. Sorry, Bubba. It still could be possible.
So it's like there's explanations to that, and the people involved, including me, including Rosie, including the others, all know that. They all know that, and they just don't want to publicly say it. And it's like, at the end of the day, like I respect it to a certain extent, but once you start trying to create other problems, like calling people a liar and doing stuff like that, and it's not like this is on some small local scale stuff. No, this is on a global scale. You know, you are globally attacking people, and that's not right. It's just not right. Like if you want to put a certain image of somebody out there, then just simply deny talking about any type of thing that has to do with that. Don't sit here and try to add on to it and say that people are lying or that people are doing this, because then now they go and they run back to the people that said it, and they're like, well, you're.
And I see your guys' comments. It definitely could have been something that took place in the car that was just at that moment. Absolutely. And maybe that's why Bubba is so harsh on there was no fight prior, blah, blah, blah. Like, maybe that's the extent of what they know. But the statements were wishy-washy on that to begin with.
Liar, you're a liar. How are we going to believe you? You know, and that's another main reason why neither me nor Rosie have publicly spoke out, is because if we did.
And I mean, he could have said something to Mackenzie like, we need to leave right now. I need to talk to you. And so everyone's not really aware of something that's taken place between them, but like, he's not about to do it at Paul's house with like everybody there, right? So they're in the car and she's like, what is it? Tell me, like, what do you need to talk to me about? And then he pulls out the laptop and he's like, what's this about? Because at some point you can't deny that a laptop was being shown to her as they're turning on that street. That is another thing that we like can't deny.
It's probably going to be filled with a bunch of counts. You're a liar. You're a liar. Then you'll have those 20 to 50 to 100 conscious people where they're like, okay, I see what you're saying. You know, like so it's not worth adding fuel to the fire at this point. You know.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. So she said, did you have some questions? I'm sorry, Landon. I feel like I've been talking your ear off, but I know. I just wanted to make sure.
No, I'm just really glad to hear all of this. I'm kind of new to it, so this is like a lot of information, and yeah, it's.
Yeah.
I mean, shit. Hold on. Let me see if I can do this real quick. Let me see if I can put my camera on.
One thing that I did want to know, because I keep hearing that somebody else was at the scene, and I would like to know who was the first at the scene of the accident.
Hold on. Let me see this. Let me try to do this real quick. See that right there is, no one else owns a jersey like this. Davion was buried in one of them, and the other one is framed at the high school. So the fact that people try to say that I'm not friends with this boy is disgusting. We got this. I got this picture of him. We got these personal drawings made. We got so much stuff lying around the house, man, that it's just like, nah. You know, it's bullshit.
Yeah. I say things they just want to. That's hurtful.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm good at taking certain things a certain way, and obviously, like the media and the mass attention doesn't really bother me. But coming from a more personal standpoint on everything, it hurts me to see certain individuals coming out here and trying to say that I'm not these boys' friends. You know?
Yeah.
And that I'm only Mackenzie's friend, that I'm Mackenzie's minion, or that I'm like, no, it's not the case. And it's crazy because I thought the documentary would have kept this in, but they didn't. And one of the first things that I said to them, and that I tell everybody, is that Mackenzie is not my friend. And this might sound like over the top and over like bad, but just hear me out. If she were to get 30 years or no parole, nothing, if she would have gotten nothing, or if she would have unfortunately lost her life in that accident, it would not make a difference to me. It would not make a difference to my feelings, to my emotions on the situation, because at the end of the day, I lost my two friends. I lost a brother. You know what I mean? I lost someone that was like very close in my life. But at the end of the day, I still stand 10 toes down. I still stand so strong on the fact that they didn't get into a fight that morning and she just purposely went and murdered them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't believe it. I don't believe it for a heartbeat. I won't believe it ever. There's no.
Now that you said that, you've also never seen her just spaz out for no reason, or you have?
No, never.
I know that's another one. She just snaps.
No, I've never seen her spaz out or just snap. I know, like, there was one time, I think it was when we were in OU after the accident. She had given me an attitude about how I had said something to Rosie. And me just being a man and it being my relationship, you know, I felt some type of way. I was like, well, how the fuck are you about to tell me how to feel in my relationship? You know, like that was the only ever time where I was like, man, watch how you talk to me, you know, like in a way. But it wasn't like she was aggressive or she snapped. It was just because I said something about, like, I don't want to go too much in detail or context of what it was, but like, it's like some personal shit with my relationship, but like, right. I had said something stupid.
I swear he just called it a relationship. S-H-I-T, I swear. And I wish he would elaborate on this because this is interesting. So he snaps at Mackenzie after the crash. Hold on, let's rewind that. Listen to see If he says relationship, let me know. Maybe I heard it wrong.
Was, but like, because the thing about, like, I don't want to go too much in detail or context of what it was, but like, because like some personal shit with my relationship, but like,
Right.
I said something stupid, basically, in a way, and she tried jumping on my ass for it, and I was like, nah, like, you ain't gonna jump on my ass for that, you know what I mean? It's the only time that I've ever experienced any form of something other than, I guess, like happiness in a way, happiness or just enjoying being there, you know? There's never, like, I've been to her house with Dom and Kenzie. I've been to Dom's house with Dom and Kenzie. Never once have I ever seen them snap on each other or them do something or act a certain way towards each other, you know? I've been in the car with them. I've been out in public with them. Never.
Now, Shisha had asked, and I know you spoke about Rosie being at the car. Can you go through that one more time for her? Because I know the first person that reported the accident was the guy passing a passerby on a motorcycle, and he reported that he saw a car into the building, right? That was the initial report of the accident. And then and again, this is big going around. I don't believe it, however, that Rosie was at the car. So can you talk about that just one more time? Because I know she should.
Yeah.
Well, and the reason I was asking, because I know if you have an iPhone, like my daughter was in a crash a couple of weeks ago, and it immediately notified me. So like I was there before anybody else. I mean, like her entire family showed up.
Yeah. So, hey, I'll explain all the way from the beginning. So that leading up to that day, me and Rosie were in the Outer Banks. We were in the Outer Banks for a week with my family. I have pictures of us, but we were in the Outer Banks for that whole week prior. Literally, even that day, like that day of the accident, like that night, I guess, that full day we spent driving back from the Outer Banks. So we were at the Outer Banks on vacation, and once we started getting closer towards home, Rosie's like, oh, Paul's parents are home. Like, should we go over to Paul's house and have everybody over there and hang out and whatnot and potentially, you know, trip and do this? And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. That sounds fun. Whatever. So she ends up texting Kenzie and they end up making plans. So we get home and we drop the luggage off at the house. Rosie ends up going home to her house to drop her luggage off. And now I'm at my house, right? So I get in my truck and we meet at Paul's house. Well, I guess at some point over text message or whatever, Kenzie and Rosie were talking about not taking mushrooms. And by the time like we got there, it was 10 o'clock. And so then we chilled for about an hour and a half. And Kenzie and Dom arrived Kenzie, Dom, and Dave arrived between 11 and 12. And when they got there, they were kind of like, oh, I feel like it's kind of too late. Like it's 12 o'clock at night already. I don't think we should take these. Like usually when we take them, because like I said, we've taken shrooms with them a handful of times prior to that. And there were always more of like, you know, we took them at 6, 7 o'clock and then, you know, everything was said and done by 2 a.m., you know, but the fact that it was 12 o'clock at this point, we're like, we don't know. We don't want to take them. And then I know Kenzie and Dom, like they were on their like little health grind, eating healthy. That's where that whole McChicken thing from the documentary comes. They just clipped that. But the full explanation of the whole McChicken thing is that like they eat healthy and that like the fact that they eat healthy, they wouldn't do this. That she wouldn't go out of her way and harm her body like this. But that's a whole different topic. But so they were on like their health grind and they wouldn't eat just potato chips and shitty snacks that we would have. They would eat their own snacks. They'd eat healthy. They'd eat non-GMO chips, non-GMO popcorn. And so they end up forgetting all of their snacks. And when they first got there, they were there for about 10, 15 minutes. And then Kenzie was like, oh, fuck, I forgot the popcorn. I forgot our snacks. And they were kind of like on the fence about going back for it. And Kenzie talked Dom into doing it. So they ended up going back, grabbing snacks. She ended up coming back with a big bowl of popcorn. I know they had a pack of blueberries, which the crazy story about this is I found the package of those blueberries at the accident scene after they had cleared the car out. That was like some of the scraps they left around was part of the blueberry packaging. But so they ended up going back for their snacks, just her and.
That's interesting that like not only did he visit the crash site like memorial, but it sounds like he went like right up to the building and like looked at the debris laying around. Hang on.
At the accident scene after they had cleared the car out. That was like some of the scraps they left around was part of the blueberry packaging. But so they ended up going back for their snacks, just her and Dom, and then coming back. And at that point, I would say it was about 12:30. And we ended up, the girls ended up doing their thing on the floor, coloring in coloring books. And me, Dave, and Dom were chilling on the couch watching shit. The girls ended up at one point going back into the back room at the night and watching High School Musical while me, Dave, and Dom still stayed up front. I think actually when they went back to watch High School Musical, I think that's when Kenzie came back up and was like, I'm going to go to sleep. She ended up sleeping. And it was just Rosie and Nina in the back watching High School Musical. And that was like the rest of the night, all the way up until they left, was just them in the back room, them 2 girls in the back room, and us 4 up front with Kenzie sleeping. And so I ended up getting up at like right before they leave, I end up getting up to go check on Rosie, see what she's doing, see if she's asleep or whatnot. And I peek my head around the corner. I don't see no movement. I don't see no commotion. I see the TV going. So I turn back. Once I turn back, that's when Dom was waking Kenzie up to get up, and they were getting up. And I dabbed Dom up, said peace. And then Davion came up to me, gave me the hug, said, I love you. We talked about him coming home with me. He ended up opting out to go back home and shower and sleep. And then we watched them get in the car and leave. And so after that, I ended up going back into the back room with Rosie, where Rosie and Nina were, and we were contemplating if we should try falling asleep there. And I was pretty awake. I know she was kind of tired, but I know I was pretty awake. So I tried laying down for about 10 minutes. Couldn't sleep. Ended up being like, okay, let's get up. So we got up and we ended up leaving. Well, me and Rosie drove separately because we drove separately there. And we took, so if you're familiar with Strongsville, there's two main roads that connects the southern side of Strongsville to the northern side of Strongsville. It's Pearl Road and West 130th.
Pearl Road a lot,
Yep.
yeah.
Pearl Road and West 130th. Pearl Road is like that side of town. West 130th is like from east to west, is on the other side of town, and then runs north to south, So those are the two roads. So we ended up taking West 130th home that morning. And I think in my police interview, I talk about how it was weird because I never really take West 130th home. And it was just weird that I did that morning. Like, I was like one of those weird coincidences where, like, I don't know, like, you wouldn't have been able to see the crash driving down Pearl, but like,
I personally don't really believe in weird coincidences, especially on the days of a murder.
like, you would have been, maybe, I don't know, like maybe I felt something if I drove closer to it. I don't know. I always just think about that. And that's why I think it's a weird coincidence. But so we ended up driving down West 130th and we got to my house. And while we were on vacation, my sister ended up getting COVID. And my mom, who has the most shittiest immune system I've ever met in my life, she ended up getting it. So my mom got it, my cousin that was there got it, and my sister got it. So when we got back to the house, we remembered that my mom had COVID. And we were kind of out there like, Rose, like, I don't know if I really want to go inside. Like, I might run the risk of getting COVID. And I was like, well, you can just chill in my room the whole time. I just quarantine basically in my room safe. She's like, yeah. She goes, no, I'll just go home. I don't want to run the risk. I was like, okay. So she ended up getting in her car and she took Pearl home instead of West 130th. So she drove down Pearl Road, which goes right past Progress Drive. It's just you can't see the other side of Progress Drive from Pearl. It's a long road and it's a windy road. So you just can't see. It's not like she drove past and saw a car crash into a building at the end of the road. No, she didn't see nothing. I don't even think she probably glanced down the road. The whole reason why that
it was in the back off the road too.
Yeah, and the whole reason why that this whole story was even a story and got miscommunicated in the first place is because that morning when she was driving home at like, I would say at this point, it was like 6 a.m. after all this shit after us contemplating on going home at Paul's and then contemplating her coming into the house. She was probably driving home about 6 a.m. So the sun was rising. Everything was going. It was bright outside. And she remembers seeing the beautiful sunset and just thinking about how, she has all these memories in this city and she's about to go to college and move on with her life on the next big step of her life. And not only is she leaving her family behind, but she's leaving behind partially like this group of 6 solid people, me, her, Nina, Paul, Davion, Kenzie, Dom, like we're leaving behind this solid ass group that we've been hanging out for the last 3 months, 3 months of the whole summer. It's been a solid, probably one of the most funnest solid summers we've ever had in our life. And she was just sitting there having like a wholesome moment about it. And then like coincidentally not knowing at the time that they had passed away, at that exact moment they were sitting in that car, And so like afterwards, after obviously finding out about this and whatnot, that was like a story she would tell people is that like, it's just crazy, like the parallel, where it's like she was feeling those type of emotions going down Pearl and like not knowing that had just happened, and one of those kids that was around to hear that story is who went into the police station and like mistranscribed it or miscommunicated it in a way of, oh, she drove right past the accident, but didn't call the police. No, she didn't drive right past the accident. She drove 0.7 miles away from the accident, but that's that's where that whole story comes from basically.
Yeah.
Neither of us owned Life 360. If there was a car that stopped there, or if Rosie's car did go by, which the police would know which car Rosie drives, and they would see that car on camera, and they didn't, obviously. And not only that, like even to this day, I would let the police take my phone and see if I've ever had Life 360 installed, and I haven't. I just simply haven't. That's not an app that I use. I use Find My iPhone rather than the Life 360.
But do you know who the first on the scene was?
So I know. So I don't know, like, personally at all. Like, I don't know who it was, but I did. After the Netflix documentary came out, I saw in one of the Facebook, like, on the Strongsville Moms page, I saw in the Facebook comments someone that knew the person that found them. And I guess he was some like older man that drives a motorcycle, but he didn't keep his phone. He didn't keep his phone on him when he found it. So he ended up driving past it, seen it, but then had to go all the way back home and then call police before he couldn't just call him right away. He ended up having to go back home and call him. And they had said in the comments that as of now, he has passed on. So I don't really know too much about it. I don't know anything about him, I guess, you know.
Okay, because I was just curious if one of the parents would have got an alert.
Yeah, I would assume the Life 360 would have given an alert, but it didn't. It didn't give an alert of a crash. It usually it does. And that's another thing too. I'd like to I guess throw out there.
I think you have to pay for like the Life 360 that lets you know about collisions. I could be wrong because I don't know. God forbid that ever happens. I have Life 360. I don't know. Like I've never obviously seen that then, but I don't know. Some you have to pay extra for certain things, but that is interesting if it didn't register a crash. Bubba needs to stop watching Lifetime movies.
Life 360, which is wild because I did see like a lot of inconsistencies with the Life 360. And what I mean by that is when they first, like when Husni and all them kids that were on that were going around showing everyone, like it was glitching out and like not giving the proper route that they took. It was like showing that they drove through woods and they did a bunch of crazy shit, like routes that you just physically couldn't drive through, you know? And
I have seen personally, like Life 360 will say that somebody is somewhere, but really they're like 5 minutes further down the road. So again, this is like working off of like satellites and, you know, tech isn't always 100% accurate. It's very close to accurate because there are other times where it says that somebody's pulling in my driveway and they literally are, you know what I mean? But had this gone where to a trial where they had experts testify, like that didn't happen. You know, so like Mackenzie's team didn't call on some like tech expert for Life 360 who would have said like, well, this isn't 100% accurate and we don't really know. But it registered her driving almost 90 miles per hour on the Life 360. And then the car information backed that up. You know, so like the computer in her car was pulled and all that data was shown, not to mention like the physics alone. She had to have been driving pretty darn fast for that car to fall apart the way it did, right? So Bubba like trying to argue like the accuracy of Life 360. It's like, just stop, Bubba.
I don't know why that was like that, but then that prompted me to look up and legally, like you're not allowed to use anything off of Life.
Okay, thank you so much, Cowboy RC. So Life 360 Gold will give you the crash alerts. Thank you. And hi Val, so good to see you.
360 in court. That's not legal. It's not for legal uses. So like the fact that they push so hard, oh, the Life 360 shows this is like, but you can't, like, it's really like not accurate information. It's like the most accurate factual information in my opinion. But I mean, obviously does it give a story of what speed they were going? Yeah. You know what I mean? But the fact that it didn't notify anybody that there was a crash or any of those sorts questions me. Cause I mean, I think that somebody.
Bubba, why are you questioning why Life 360 didn't show if there was a crash? We know there was a crash. Like that's not something you need to like focus on and like argue. Like there's no denying that a crash took place. So because the Life 360, which we end up finding out the gold version, you get the crash alerts, like didn't alert about a crash, like that's just stop.
Probably would have been able to get there quicker if it didn't notify them. Because like you said, and like we said, Davion was texting one of those kids that was in the Life 360. He was in that Life 360 group. He was texting him a minute before they died. So it's like they probably, like, those kids were up and relevant. They probably would have saw the notification go through on their phone. Hey, there's been an accident reported, you know, at 90 miles per hour, sudden impact, sudden stop. Like it's usually what Life 360 tells you, but it didn't tell them in that case.
Yeah, I did notice that. So Nene, you can request to come on, guys. Nene's in the chat. She's the one whose video I told you that I reacted to. And yeah, come on up because you had a lot of good information and I appreciate those videos. Hello.
Hi.
How are you? So I reacted to your video today, and I appreciated your explanation.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say first, I am not any like an expert or anything. However, I started seeing some inconsistencies with what Tim Troop was presenting compared to what was actually in the EDR file itself, the crash instruction report, and then there is Amanda, the EDR analyst on here. Mm-hmm. So if you remove her tone, that she obviously thinks that Mackenzie did this on purpose, removing that and just listening to what she has to say, and in her comment section, I got, she confirmed that yes, that hard turn is more than likely part of one turn sequence. Like she was already trying to turn. And then if you look in the original report, like the police report, it shows the tire marks far before what it shows in the grand jury presentation. Like it shows her trying, like she's going towards the left and something happened where she veered towards the right, hit that curb. After that curb, the airbags were deployed. Nothing could be stopped from there. So them saying that she intentionally aimed for that, the EDR doesn't show that. The EDR shows from airbag deployment until the last thing that was recorded, not the wall hit. From airbag deployment to the wall hit is like 1/1000. That's it. That's as quick as that happened. And she's already over the gears. Obviously, that's why it's showing this. And Toyota specifically says not to pay attention to those, the time frame, that all of these sensors you're seeing, the yaw, the steering, the brake pressure, the acceleration, those are all separate sensors recording simultaneously at one time. And so they're just separating it.
I will say this too. Another thing that now I haven't refreshened up on the EDR data itself. I will say from when I originally was like I've always been invested in this case, but when it was really like, the information, we were really diving deep in the information and the facts. What I gained from it is, so tell me if I'm wrong, at 4.7 seconds when the EDR started recording, is that when the car detected a rollover event and that's when the airbags deployed?
So the TRG5 is where the airbags were deployed, and that is where the hard steering happened. Is that when the EDR turns on? When did the EDR start recording? What caused the EDR to start recording? Because what I heard is rollover event, and the rollover event was more than likely the 46.6 degree angle the car went on when it is going up on that curb, because you're from that area, so that's not just a curb that is like a straight angle. No, it's a curb that's going from the road up. Let me explain my theory or what I've gained from it. So, all right, so at 4.7 seconds is when the EDR turns on. And it records. So that's the last event that it recorded. All right. So, but at 4.7 is when it recorded a rollover, and that's what they said. You said no. Yes, 4.7 seconds before impact. Yes, before impact, right? Not before the impact. So after the impact, where you see all those invalid. Right. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. So you see where all those invalid is at the very bottom. Yeah. All right, so we're looking at 18. Okay, the bottom one, if you look at table 2, that is the very last thing that the car recorded. Okay, now when you see that the car hits the wall and then it goes to its final resting position, when it's in that final resting position is where this invalid is. Now you see the 168 degree turn and the 171 degree turn. Yeah. All right, can you go up where it shows on table 1 the RPMs? All right. Do you know anything? Right? No. Yeah, right there. Do you know anything about vehicles or anything? I mean, I know a decent bit. I work on them and fix them, right. But not to the craziest extent. No, I don't. You don't have to. But if you're pressing the gas 100% and you're in park, what are your RPMs doing? To the max. They're going up. They're going up. So you see where her RPMs. She's on the road. Then you see where it jumps up to almost at 6,900, 6,500. She's going airborne there. There's no traction on. Yeah. And also if you go over the throttle, look at the throttle. That is nowhere near even halfway open right there. Yeah. And then I thought that was weird too. The 13 and 23. Where she hits the wall, right there where it says RPM 6,700. That gas is still going straight forward, or all the way down, but the car is not going anywhere. And then that's where it flips over and it's at its final resting point. So where you see the TRG5 would be, can you go out just a little bit?
More.
All right, on table 2, where you see the brake pressure,
Right here.
That is right above that, but not where you see it on this table. Right between those seconds, that is where the airbags were deployed.
All right.
But you can't look at the seconds. You can't look at the seconds, though. That's what I'm saying. That's not accurate, and it says it in this report that time is not accurate. This is all happening together.
All right, because how I originally looked at it, because like I didn't go too crazily deep on the table and like the EDR. I just went off of like what I was heard in court or what I was told, and like what I had came up with was, so from the point of impact, if they're going 100 miles per hour, and I know it drops down to like 88.6 or whatever at the last recorded speed or whatever, but if you take the average of 190 miles per hour and you put that in, how far do you travel for 4.7 seconds at that speed? You travel like 230 yards. It's 2 football fields length of distance, right?
260 feet.
So at 4.7 seconds, 1 second at 100 miles per hour, you're moving 140 feet per second. So take that 140 feet and times it by like 4.7, you get 600 and something 80 feet. That translated into yards is about 230 yards. So I went on Google Map or Google Earth and I put in 680 feet away from the impact point. And right there, right exactly at 4.7 seconds where that distance is, there used to be this humongous like divot in the road. Like I'm talking, me and Rosie drove down that road at 50 miles per hour and we went airborne. Like this divot was huge. It was a huge, like random just bump in the road. Like just a random bump that formed there over the years of the road. And they actually, when the accident happened, before the judge could go drive down the road, they went through and they replaced that whole section of road. They removed that whole section of road where that bump.
Okay. And do you have photo evidence of this, like divot and these events that took place? So now all of a sudden the ground had flaws in it. Bubba.
But like now knowing this information, I look differently at it, but I just thought at the time it was weird that those distances matched up to a T, like to a T, where it says that this airbag or this rollover event occurred to how far it was on maps. It was exactly where it was said it was supposed to be. And then I did another test where I drove the road at 25 miles per hour. And I was like, so right where that divot was, I was at 25 miles per hour and I drove all the way down to the end of the road where they crashed at. And I kept in mind the little 20 yards, 30 yards of grass up to the building. And that math even came out to be the exact same distance that they say that this whole airbag rollover event went off on. So,
and again, present us evidence of this, experiment.
I was believed that the rollover event wasn't caused from a curb. It was caused from that divot in the road. But now after you guys have explained it to me, you know what I mean? I've understood it a little bit more.
Yeah, the rollover event, actually, the car felt like it was rolling over and it was at a 46.6 degree angle. That's more than half of 90 degrees. That's more than, like, the car literally thought it was flipping.
Yeah.
That's why the airbags came out.
Yep.
And you know what? Listen, in these case files, if it's being read, Tim Troop knew all of this. Every single thing, he knew it, and he presented it like he literally was gaslighting everybody. Yeah. Because none of this proof. If this starts when the airbags deploy, she's already over the shifter. Like, there's nothing that they can do about it, and they already knew that she was turning left. They already knew. It's in the original report. There's a diagram. And something happened to this car. Like, they gave themselves reasonable doubt, not Mackenzie.
So let me ask you, what is your explanation? What do you think happened?
I just think exactly what the state tried to present, that she was a reckless driver. And I'm not saying that she was. I am not saying that. I'm saying based on the facts showing that she did drive 90 miles per hour plus on multiple occasions while recording herself, while like casually, she did this casually. There is evidence that shows that she was a 17-year-old misguided child who did not use her common sense. So obviously they're probably just driving like to her it's normal. And also in expert testimonies, they say that driving in the daylight, let alone dark, that tree covers the stop sign, it obscures the view of the building. So she sees it last minute and there's nothing. Yeah. They say, I don't know, Landon, if you can like back this part up, but also in there, Tyler says, I don't know why Davion would be snapping with me if there was something wrong or something going on in that car.
Yeah, I agree. I totally think, and this not only even the text messages, the fact that they didn't have their seatbelts on properly tells me too that something was up, because I know damn well if she was crashing out and was screaming and wanting to crash that car, the first thing that's going through Davion, at least Davion's head, is putting his seatbelt on. As being like a third party person in there, like almost like a third wheel in a way. Like, maybe he doesn't know if he feels comfortable speaking on too much of their relationship. Like, I would just put my seatbelt on before I would start trying to calm the situation down. That'd be the first thing I do is put my seatbelt on. And I feel like that's what he would do. And another thing I do want to touch back on too that you just said is I can confirm that going down that road in complete pitch darkness, you can't see that building. Can't. You literally just can't. And at the beginning of the road there are street lights. At the end of the road there is no street lights. It is complete and utter darkness at the end of that road.
Yeah.
I also say too, the airbags deploying early, completely discredits the fact that she precisely put that car in the corner of the building,
Yeah, the steering literally jumps from where you see she's going left. It's 7 degrees left, 9 degrees left, 4 degrees left, and then it jumps from 4 degrees left to 25 degrees right. And then so that's a significant turn. It's 4.5 to negative 25.5, I think. That's a 30-degree jump.
Okay, let me fast forward this lady a little bit because
At the same time.
I'm not trying to talk about math.
Time.
I want to hear Bubba.
They were all reckless, right? Didn't Davion lose his license?
He crashed multiple cars. I know that.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So it's being young, it's being stupid, definitely reckless, right? I absolutely agree that she should serve time in jail. I do believe that she's the reason these boys are dead because of her recklessness and her stupidity being a kid, right? And that immortality feeling that we all had when we were young. Yep. I really believe that. However, I don't think anything, and especially with this drive, does it show intent to me. I don't see the intent for her to drive right into that building.
That's what I'm saying.
It was a reason for them to look into her past. Now that all these extra recordings are coming out, it gave them a reason to start looking at supporting evidence.
Yep.
Because this EDR does not prove intent.
It does not say
this
right.
EDR shows the crash. The EDR shows the crash. And also I want to add before I forget, I'm so sorry. When she's turning on to that, what is it? Progress? If you slow down that, maybe, I'm sorry, it's at the light.
Yeah.
If you really slow that down and you brighten it up and add the add contrast and everything, you can see that Dominic is holding a tablet of some sort or something. And Davion is kind of between the driver's seat and the passenger seat. He's also got his phone right there. They're showing her things while she's driving fast also. This is not they're very casual. It looks very casual.
I'm interested on that tablet, dude, because there was no so I remember
maybe not a tablet, maybe it was just his phone.
Yeah, I see. I saw that light when we first saw that footage. I saw that.
It's mentioned in the detective report as a laptop, and then in Dom's mother's interview, he states that the laptop was found, but it was smashed.
Light instantly. And I had just automatically assumed that it was Davion being on his phone since we knew Dave was on his phone. I just thought it was him.
Davion was in the back seat. So how the hell are we seeing the phone light in the front seat? And it's much bigger than a phone.
Being on his phone. But now that it's been blowing up and I've been seeing all these images and I've been seeing, enhanced or, whatever image it's been messed with, it kind of really does seem like it's a laptop or a tablet. I don't know, it doesn't seem like it's a small phone putting off a lot of light. It seems like it's a big device putting off a lot of light. And that's just not found in evidence at all. That's just trips me out.
Yeah, it could be his laptop because I've heard a lot of people saying that. But also when you mess with when you start enhancing it and messing with it, it also does look like it could be just a phone blended in with the reflection of the light that's already reflecting.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, I would assume that it's just a phone because
you can see in the video that I've done a few of them and live streams on this. We didn't alter the tone of the photo or anything. We just simply zoomed in, and we even put a screenshot of it into ChatGPT to get their opinion. And they also came out saying that they believed it was a laptop or an iPad screen. And like I said, the The detective states to Dom's mother that the laptop was found and it was smashed. And then that is the last time we ever hear about it. That's a problem, in my opinion.
I mean, I think that if there was a tablet or laptop found, that would be like taken pictures of, like how they took pictures of all the other devices found and stuff.
But even that too,
Yeah.
being on your phones casually, they're not calling for help, right? So that right there shows that they were distracted.
That's
they were
the
talking about
biggest
everything
thing
that went on at the party, right? Oh, did you hear so-and-so said this? Did you see that? Why didn't we do anything? Like, I'm sure they were having conversations, showing phones, totally distracted, in the dark, obviously exhausted. They were at the zoo. They went to that first party. They were up that night. You know what I mean? So they had to have been tired. And again, that plays a big part in it. And
No, I just don't think that you would have control of the vehicle on that road the way that she did if she was just dozing off tired.
we don't know about the drug situation. We don't know what they did before they even got to Paul's house, or if they even did anything at Paul's house, right?
Even when my fucking mom found out, she found out from my head football coach, and my head football coach heard that they were on LSD. That's what they heard. And I was like, well, I feel like we'd be able to tell, like, if they were on a psychedelic like that. Like, if we were with them that night, I would be able to tell if they were tripping on something from a psychedelic. And to our best of capabilities, they weren't. Like, there was no clear telltale signs that that was what was happening. And this is what I like to, I tell everyone at the end of the day is that, like, the thing that me and Rosie sit here and say is that, no, we don't think that she should just completely be free out of jail, walking free. No, we think that this case was investigated not improper. That I just simply, we don't believe that they got into a fight, and that's what caused that car crash. There's no evidence pointing towards that. All the evidence, all of the eyewitnesses, all of the credible evidence that does point to that points in the opposite direction. So, like, I just don't believe that. And, like, anything else that it could be other than intentional murder, and what I mean by that is, reckless driving, a medical condition, suicide, anything, I can forgive her for that. I can forgive her if they were recklessly driving and that happened, because knowing them two boys, they weren't in fear. They weren't sitting there freaking out.
Anybody. It could
Yeah,
have been anybody.
It was, yeah.
Jamie in the comments, Jamie, I love you to death, man. I do. But you said that behavior predicts future behaviors. Well, I mean, I had my instances as a teenager where I did things that were reckless, right? But it doesn't mean as an adult we grow up to be reckless.
Yeah.
So we can't just say that, you know what I mean? Like that her history of behaviors or her history or her behaviors now predicts who she's going to be or what she did. Like, you got to remember that even at 20 years old, what was Dom, 20?
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's still young, still reckless, I absolutely believe that they were being stupid and reckless.
I was
right? Like, the lifestyle at the time shows it. I
was a completely different person at that time. I was a completely different person in the months of going into college and experiencing college. And I'm a completely different person now, like completely. Like my thoughts on everything and the way that I am and my emotions and the way I handle them, they're all completely different from how it was back in the day. So, like, yeah, I would agree. Like, it's not true that someone's actions, especially as a 17-year-old, is going to dictate what they do in the future. Now, it's different, if you're a 27-year-old and you do some things and you're like, and then that kind of gives some people the right maybe to say, okay, I can see you doing that 20 years down the road, But when you're at a 17-year-old or any age younger than that, no, you can't take what somebody does and say, oh, that's how they're going to be in the future,
Yeah, I agree. Nene, you were writing something in the chat. Did you want to say something?
Oh no, it was just on the comment on where they said past behavior predicts future behavior. It can. I just watched that same document where the psychiatrist said that. I was just stating like it can predict it. Obviously, because she's been a reckless driver before, that can predict that she did this recklessly.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Not like the way you can't just always take it negatively.
I meant more towards like the maturity
not
levels.
you.
I
Not
guess.
you.
Yeah. I guess I meant more like the maturity levels in the way that her reactions are to certain situations, or the way that her and Dom fought. That could definitely be grown upon and expanded on.
But if they were to present the EDR the way that it is, the experts themselves say that it is, the crash reconstruction report says, there would be no reason to look into any part of their lives at all.
Yep.
Yeah.
Zero at all.
Well,
I feel like we
wouldn't be discussing this, and we wouldn't be pulling apart every single one of her actions, because if this was an innocent person, everybody would be saying you can't judge somebody on how they grieve.
Dad. And let's be real. And I'm not trying to, she's her actions, just the way she is, her attitude, her personality. She's not really likable. For all of us who went to high school, to me, she was the mean girl, right? And it is what it is. That's what she is showing, right? I don't know her personally, and that's what we see. And I think people want to not like her. I also think that people wanted somebody to be responsible. They wanted this to be a murder. And so they pushed that narrative. And I think when people want to see something, no matter what you show them in front of their face to speak otherwise, they're going to make everything come to the conclusion that they want.
That's absolutely true. It really is. But I think a lot of these people that are doing that, they're thinking that everybody needs to let this go because obviously Dominic and Davion's family and their friends, everybody needs to heal. But healing from losing somebody from an accident and healing from somebody purposely taking them from you, that's a totally different process.
And I would want to heal from the truth.
Like it really is. And it doesn't matter how we see her, it doesn't matter how evil we think that she is, she still deserves the right to a fair trial. And she did not get that.
That's all. That's exactly how I feel, is that no matter what information comes out, no matter what fights, whatever level of toxicity comes out, I just want to know the truth, and I want to know the best investigated route to that accident. I don't want to know some bullshit made up story. But I will say this. I'm gonna get off here. I'm gonna go get me some ice cream. But there is one thing I'd like to say, because I heard you mention it like a little bit ago about the mean girl, or she a mean girl or whatever. And I want to say this on this live because I said it on the last live so that whole Mean Girl Murders documentary. Let me spill some tea about that. So they claim in there that her, Rosie, and Kenzie were like the Regina George and the Mean Girls, right? And they would walk down the hallways bullying people. Isn't that right? Here's what's crazy. We were all in high school the same year, right? We all same graduating class. Freshman year, Kenzie attended high school. I remember because I'd see her and Dom walk around. Sophomore year, a couple months in, was COVID. We ended up going online. All sophomore year, we were online. Junior year, it was half online, half in person, but you could opt and choose if you want to be all online. So Kenzie was all online junior year. So she did not attend the high school sophomore year nor junior year. Senior year, and I'd like to say this, let's get her attendance record of senior year, because I had one class of her where I only saw her attend that class once the entire year, one time the entire year. So like this whole fucking thing of them being in high school, it was a complete made up story. It was a made up narrative to like feed into that. And like I said, like go back and find that video that Kenzie sent to Rosie of her talking about doing her nails and talking about pearls, whatever that date is when they is relatively, I would say give or take a few weeks, is relatively when they started talking a lot. Anything before that, they were not friends. They did not talk. They weren't like really deeply involved with each other. So like anything before that, it's all bullshit. Oh, them being in school, them being the Regina George of the school, it's all bullshit. It's completely made up. Rosie in high school was like the complete opposite. She was more of an introvert. She was more of like, had her little friend group and went about her day. I was more of like the class clown. I was the one that was, always just being obnoxious and causing a scene and causing attention to myself like that. We were two completely different opposite people when it came to that in school. And so when we saw this Mean Girls doc, and
Bubba admits that he was being obnoxious. That's something I do believe.
Saw that, they're saying that Rosie, Nina, and Kenzie were walking in a line of 3 down the hallway, like pushing people out the way. I'm like, that's complete and utter bullshit. It's bullshit.
Hey, Landon, before you leave, can I give you a little bit of introspect? And I agree with you. I want to be really clear. I have not heard you speak at all until tonight. And I was against you and Rosie. I'm going to be quite honest. Like, I thought you guys were like, but just simply because I didn't even start doing lives until like last week. So I had no idea. I love Ivory Rose because this is the reason. Now I'm completely opposite. I see where you're coming from. So what I was trying to bring to the table is I got married at 16. I have been 30 years, mostly happily married. It takes work, but you and Rosie are still together, right?
Yeah, we've been together for 9 years coming on.
Exactly. So it's not all like love bubbles and all this stuff.
No.
Let's don't play that.
No.
That's my issue with a lot of it. I can promise you, I am 46 years old. I promise you, when it's good, it's good. And I have toxic traits. I'm not going to say I'm a toxic person, but I do have toxic traits. I think we all do. I have some trauma. I think Mackenzie also has some trauma. I think Dom clearly has some trauma. I think they both do. I think most of us do. Somebody gave me perspective earlier today that like I think everyone needs to be aware of. If something were to like, if that exact thing were to happen to me today and my husband got unalived, they could look back at our text messages and I'm going to tell you, because he goes quiet And it seems like Dom was the same way.
That's exactly how I am.
Exactly.
I just,
and
I
think
stopped
that's a
saying
man
shit.
thing.
Yep.
And as females, no, we're like, nope, 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 nope. You're gonna talk. You're gonna talk. You're gonna talk. Nope, nope. Because that's just how I am. So it would be. She literally enlightened me to that. I was like, Jesus, if somebody looked at just our text messages, it would be so easy to say that I did that on purpose.
Yep.
Yo,
And
I'd
like to add something in there that's specific to Dom and Kenzie too, that builds on that. And the thing is like, we got to remember people who Dom is and like what he knows he's doing. Like in certain fields and certain subjects of fights, you know, like they fought about numerous of different things, thousands of different things, right? He knew when not to say too much. He knew that, you know, and he would catch himself before he did, you know. And I would say that, like, you can even go as far to say, like, him saying that she would blackmail him and stuff like that to the police. Like, he knew that. He was conscious that could be a problem and that could be a possibility if their relationship really went a certain way. Like, I would see her blackmailing him and making him be locked up for the rest of his life before she would take his life away in a fight.
Absolutely.
That's in all complete honesty. So it's like, Dom knew that, though. You know, Dom knew that she had that power.
And my husband knows that about me. Like, that's what I'm trying to say. And whoever commented that crappy comment to me, you know, I'm not going to get this lock shut down, but you know.
Okay, I don't want to hear this, lady. I'm just going to skim through the last few minutes for Bubba.
Marriages, if that's what you think.
Then before you go, Landon, let me just let her talk 1 second. She's been sitting up here.
Yes, please. Our own abuse.
Not entry that I've media and things. I got sort of the essence and or they're doing you shit.
I don't feel that I've gotten from her mom and dad.
But correct me if I'm wrong. Yet from her family and like, you know, been in accidents like
yeah,
like hanging out of cars and doing things like that and doing, you know what, I just got that sort of feeling from her family and like shit at that age, like, you know, their brains aren't even fully developed yet. I just felt like there was a lack of guidance, but correct me if I'm wrong.
I would, from what I've known on this family, from like the times I've been over there with her and Dom and we've hung out, like the general feeling that I've gotten from her mom and dad is that like they knew she smoked weed, but like anything else on top of that, they didn't know. They didn't know that there was guns involved. They didn't know that he was really that much of a drug dealer. I mean, I don't think that she would just go and tell her parents, hey, my boyfriend is this big drug dealer and he does this and he does that. I don't think that's how that whole conversation went down. I think that there was a lot of hidden information. I think there was probably questions asked towards her, like, well, how can you afford this? If I've never seen him go clock in at a job, you know, and she's probably had to make up a little bullshit lie or whatnot to get herself out of it. But no, I don't think that they were fully aware of everything to the extent. And now, obviously, all this information has came out and all this stuff. They are aware now and they talk about it now. But I just don't think that they go about. I don't think that they go about in the right manner of talking about it as if they didn't know that it was going on at the time. You know, I think that they maybe need to do a little bit better job of making it known that, hey, we didn't know all of this stuff was going on at the time. We knew that she was smoking weed and they were smoking weed, but anything other than that, they didn't know about. And even like with my parents, like my mom even told me, she goes, I suspected you smoked. I could smell it on you from time to time, but I was never going to confront you about it because that's like what teenagers do. That's what kids do. They're going to do it. And if you try to enforce them not to do it, they're going to go harder at it and try to do it more behind your back, you know? And that's what a lot of parents' perspectives were here. But like, I'll say this, man, like I couldn't tell you how many different parents on the football team that we would go and drink with. They'd buy us booze and we'd get there and we'd get sloshed. And then we drive home at 5 a.m, you know, like, and they all knew it. Everyone was consciously aware of it. The parents were, nobody cared. So like, when it comes to Kenzie's parents, I think they weren't as bad as those other parents were. Mm-hmm. I think that now that the media is just so attentive on them and that they're just dissecting every little thing, they're getting painted in a really, really bad light. But no, I don't think that they were like misguiding parents or that they weren't, you know, enforcement on their daughter. Like I know multiple times when Rosie would tell me that Kenzie got grounded, you know, and stuff like that. So like stuff did happen. Like she did get grounded. She did get punished if they found out about certain things. But
on some of the main things, they turned a blind eye to, you know, like her being allowed to smoke weed in the house, being underage, her being allowed to live over at Dom's house underage while still in high school. Like these things are not normal, I guess, if you want to use that word. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's parents in chat that don't see a problem with those two things. Those are only two of the things that the Shirillas like seem to be okay with, that I just feel like she was not to the mature capacity to handle a live-in boyfriend. You know what I mean? Like that takes maturity. And she wasn't there yet. She was not mature enough to consent to smoking weed the way that she did. You know, her brain's still developing and all that. Like, there should have been more strict rules, you know, like same with drinking. There's photos and stuff of her drinking. She's obviously not 21. And yes, these are things that teens do, but it just, in my opinion, it seems like the Shirillas like knew more about things. Like they could have had more of a grasp on what they chose to allow and what they didn't.
Yeah. Even to this day, like there are certain situations that Kenzie's never told her parents the fullest extent on, and then we told them, they're like, "What the fuck?" Like we never heard that, you know. So I just think that it's just all painted in a real bad light in a way, you know. And I just truly don't think that they were some shit ass parents, you know. I think they were good parents. I think they cared about him. And another thing people got to realize too is like, especially in that era of parenting, that's when it came. Like, I feel like it started to switch a lot. Like I felt like some parents, and I'm not saying this is Mackenzie's case, but like I feel like some parents kind of try to make it more of an effort to become a friend of their kids and not a parent. And not in a bad light though, not in a bad way. Like I know so many parents that would like still parent and punish their kid, but then still approach them and act with them. And like when their friends are over as if they were a friend, you know, and they're not going to sit there and enforce and be some Karen, you know, they're going to be a little bit more chilled, a little bit more laid back when friends are around. And then, you know, that kid might hear about it once those friends leave, you know, that's something that we just don't know, but that's something that's between them, you know? So I just think that, and that's another thing too, is like, we can't base their parenting skill just solely off of the text messages shown. And, you know, and her dad coming out and saying that he knew she smoked weed. Okay. Like I know, like I said, my parents knew that. I know a bunch of other parents probably knew that. So it's like, it's not really a bad thing. And it might vary on areas that you're from, you know, or if the.
And here's the thing. We're not talking about, you know, is cannabis or weed or marijuana, whatever you want to call it, is good or bad. The thing is, if you're under 21, it's illegal. Even in states that it's legalized, like for recreational use, you still have to be a certain age. I believe it's 21, like alcohol. Might be 18, California. I don't know. I'm not there, so I'm in a different state. But the thing is, there's still rules and regulations, and there's a reason why they put an age limit on it, because your brain is still developing. Mackenzie was a child, so this goes to Steve Shirilla, who came out on Netflix basically saying like, well, if you're going to do a drug, it's the drug I would recommend you do. And, you know, I don't care if you smoke weed and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but she was a minor. She was still maturing. Her brain is still developing and forming. There are adverse things that can happen to a brain when it's still in the developing and puberty mode. So it's not just, oh, you know, like I'm okay with weed. This isn't like being for or against it. She was a minor. That's the mark that I feel like a lot of people miss. Like, oh, what's the big deal? It's just weed. But the big deal was she hadn't even graduated yet. And the usage was like that of like, I would say an adult, like college student, maybe even after college. Like she was smoking all day, every day. She would bring a vape to school because she obviously couldn't spark up a joint or a blunt. Like this was more than just like somebody who was a stoner who liked to smoke. Like this was like a constant, I need this.
Australia, so.
Yeah, or like the little local cities, a little bit more religious than, you know, your big hometown city that's 15 minutes from the main city, you know, like, so there's so many different variables that vary in that aspect. And it's just the simple fact that it's being broadcasted for the whole entire world, and the whole entire world consists of so many different people with so many different beliefs on how to parent a kid that like eventually it's just, you know, people are just rolling with what the majority is saying in a way. And I'm not saying that, you know, maybe there's some things that they could have punished her more on, or they could have enforced more on her. Yeah, I mean, you could say that with every fucking parent nowadays, you know? It's just the simple fact that they got blasted in the media.
Do you think that the documentary painted them in a bad light?
Better than what I thought, honestly. I honestly thought that they were like when we filmed with them, I thought that they were going to be really focused on like the friend group and like that side of the story because they were so big on like they're like, well, no one's ever heard from you guys. No, you guys didn't go into court. You guys didn't do this. Like, no one's ever heard your story. So we want your whole story to be heard. So we were like, that was the impression we were under, and we kind of thought that anything else around that was just going to be like filler information in a way. And I do think that there was a lot of information that they left out that would have helped her parents out, and things like how Dom had made a scrapbook that month of like their love life and was sending her love letters and was putting pictures in there, and that was all in the documentary, but they cut it out. They completely cut it out, didn't put it in there. And it's like, but that shows how they weren't on the stage of breaking up that week or that day, that they were that month, they were perfectly fine, and then like they also, like, I know they left out, like, and this is what makes me real mad in a way, is that, like, everyone just tries to put these text messages between Dom's mom and Kenzie about that incident on the highway. And, like, I'm sorry, nobody cares about those text messages. Like, yeah, they're relevant, but the ones that are the most relevant are the ones between her and Dom. Like, those are what matter. Those are, like, solely what matter as key evidence in this situation, in this case. And not only have the families, not only have the prosecution, but now also Netflix has refused to show those text messages to the world. And like people forget that this whole entire murder with intent, the piece of evidence that's hanging off of is the situation on the highway a week prior. That's what completely helped build their whole entire motive of intent and stuff. And it's completely factually wrong, like based off of evidence. And they just refuse to talk about the evidence that proves that wrong. And that's where I really feel like they should have done their job and at least put those text messages in there, because that just gave the right to other people kind of beating around the bush between the text messages between Dom's mom and Kenzie, or they can make up lies, or she was just victim blaming.
Well,
she was just saving
people the
face.
ability to question the situation and not just listen to the one narrative and nothing else.
Yep. Because like, I'm sorry, when you look at a text message, if I heard of some incident where someone was driving on a highway and their boyfriend tried grabbing the steering wheel in a way of a threatening manner and whatnot, and it comes out that there's eyewitnesses that say that it was the girlfriend, it was the girl that did it, but then there's text messages from the very man himself admitting he was trying to harm himself, that if anybody would be harmed in that situation, it would have been him first and her second, and that he's sorry. Like, these are words that came off of his phone. So it's like, how are you going to tell me that's wrong? How are you going to tell me that's wrong and that's not true? It came from his cellular device. It came from the phone that's in his pocket. How are you telling me that's wrong? And that's what it really just upsets me. That's what that main piece of evidence right there is really what decides my whole decision on this case, that people are lying. Is that literally that sole piece of evidence is all it took for me to just be like, okay, this is bullshit. This is a complete bullshit.
I'm sorry for keeping you from your ice cream, Landon. Thank you for answering my questions, and I'm really sorry.
The ice cream will always be there. I'll tell you, it'll always be there.
So funny. Landon, thank you so much for coming up here and talking with us and answering the questions. I really do appreciate the time that you gave us.
Yep, no problem. I mean, slowly but surely doing it. I don't want to cause too much of a flare. I'd rather reach out to smaller audiences and build that way than going full force in front of, thousands and thousands of people. And then potentially, like I said, in the other lives, there's things going on behind the scenes that I feel as if are being used like bots, like things like that, things like that. And that really won't help my case and Rosie's case in this sense. It's really just and this is what I've preached since day one. It's really like forming a personal attachment or a personal, conversation with people, not just going on a live, or not going on a live, but just not recording a video behind a camera and, you edit it for hours, edit things out and whatnot. And that's your final product. Like, no, I'd rather just sit here and say what's going through my mind. Let's say what's going through my heart. I'd rather just say that than have to sit here and like constructively put together some answer. I feel like this is more effective, and I feel like it reaches people better in a way,
Yeah, I agree.
But
all right, well, I will let you get to your ice cream, Landon. Thank you so much.
Landon coming out here talking about she didn't get a fair trial.
To determine that was a lie.
But I'm gonna keep a open mind to things, that's for sure. Tomorrow night we're gonna be touching on the Lindsay Clancy case. So we'll do a brief recap about what that case is about, and then hopefully Jen Liu from the Ward Case Studies will be joining us. And we're going to talk about that case because it's very unique in the sense that it deals with a psychosis, postpartum psychosis to be exact. And her defense is, they don't want her to be held criminally liable for the murders of her own children, that they believe she was not in the right state of mind at the time of the murders. So it's a very, very hard case to touch on, but we're going to attempt it tomorrow night because it's a very important case to kind of bring up. And we're going to pull up some cringy reporting from Hidden True Crime and Jess Machardo, and just talk about the community and whether or not like they're covering the case or not too. So that'll be tomorrow night at 8:00. Usually we go live at 9 on Friday and Saturdays, but tomorrow we're going to do 8:00. So join me then tomorrow night. I will play a video with Mackenzie talking about, what she does and what she doesn't remember the morning of the crash. And then it'll go to the outro. But I wanted to thank everybody for being here. And yeah, I think that Bubba says a lot in these interviews, and it doesn't help him or Mackenzie at all, or Rosie for that matter. But yeah, join me tomorrow night. Hit like on the way out, and let's share our thoughts and opinions in the comments below. For replay viewers, you guys are very much appreciated as well. So good night, everybody. Mackenzie Shirilla was sentenced to life in prison with eligibility for parole after 15 years for a deadly crash that killed 2 young men, including her boyfriend Dom and his friend Davion Flanagan. Netflix has come out with their own documentary called The Crash, and opens up with the dash cam from the police officer who was first on scene. This is footage from the other officer who was second on scene, and everything Mackenzie has stated since being in prison about what happened that morning. Share your thoughts below. Like and subscribe.
It was like 5 in the morning, and we decided to head back to Dom's house. And I remember turning on the street, and then I'm waking up in the hospital the next day, and my whole life is shattered. The whole morning is just like nothing. It sounds crazy, but I'm not gonna lie just because people want to hear a story. I have no recollection of that morning. I'm not saying I'm innocent. I was a driver of a tragedy, but I'm not a murderer. Through all the evidence that has been presented, the most logical speculation seems to be a medical emergency. I have no recollection of that morning, but I know nothing about it was intentional. That's not my character.